There comes a moment in life that does not announce itself, a moment that does not arrive with noise or warning, but with silence, the kind of silence that forces you to confront something you have been avoiding for far too long. And in that silence, you begin to notice a pattern, a quiet repetition in your actions, your thoughts, your relationships, and you start to question it, not loudly, not dramatically, but with a subtle discomfort that grows stronger the more you pay attention. You begin to see how often you have chased people, how much energy you have poured into being noticed, being accepted, being chosen, as if your value depended on it, as if your existence required validation from outside yourself. And at first, this realization feels unsettling, because it challenges something deeply rooted within you, something you have believed for years without ever questioning. Why do you chase? Not just in relationships, but in every aspect of life. Why do you feel the need to prove yourself, to explain yourself, to reach out first, to give more than you receive, to stay where you are not valued, to speak when silence would have preserved your dignity, to hold on when letting go would have set you free? These are not easy questions, and most people never ask them, because asking them means facing a truth that is uncomfortable, a truth that strips away the illusion of control and forces you to look inward, to examine the parts of yourself that you have neglected, ignored, or misunderstood. And so, most continue as they are, repeating the same patterns, chasing the same validation, hoping for a different outcome, never realizing that the problem was never the people they chased, but the reason they chased in the first place. But you are beginning to see it. You are beginning to notice the cost. The cost of overextending yourself for people who would not do the same. The cost of waiting for messages that never come. The cost of adjusting your personality to fit into spaces where you were never meant to belong. The cost of losing yourself, piece by piece, in the process of trying to be accepted. And the more you become aware of this, the harder it becomes to ignore, because awareness changes everything. Once you see something clearly, you cannot go back to not seeing it, you cannot pretend anymore, you cannot continue the same way without feeling the weight of that truth pressing against your mind. This is where the shift begins. Not in action, not yet, but in awareness. Because before anything can change externally, something must change internally, your perspective, your understanding, your relationship with yourself. And this is where most people stop, because awareness alone is uncomfortable. It creates tension between who you are and who you know you could be. It exposes the gap, and that gap demands effort, discipline, and honesty to close. But this is also where power begins. Because the moment you recognize that your need to chase is not a reflection of your worth, but a reflection of your conditioning, you take the first step toward freedom, and that step, though small, is significant, because it shifts your focus from the outside world to your inner world, from what others are doing to what you are doing, from seeking validation to understanding yourself. And in that shift, something quiet but powerful starts to form, a sense of responsibility, a realization that perhaps the life you are living, the patterns you are repeating, the emotions you are experiencing, are not entirely dictated by others, but influenced by the way you think, the way you react, the way you choose. This realization is not meant to blame you. It is meant to empower you. Because if your patterns are influenced by your choices, then they can also be changed by them. And this is where the philosophy of Stoicism begins to take root, not as an abstract idea, but as a practical way of seeing the world, a way that places control back into your hands, not over others, but over yourself. The Stoics understood something that most people overlook, that the external world is unpredictable, unstable, and beyond control, but the internal world, your thoughts, your judgments, your actions, is where your true power lies, and when you begin to shift your focus there, everything starts to change. You begin to question your impulses. You begin to observe your reactions. You begin to notice when you are about to chase, and pause. And that pause, that small moment of awareness before action, that is where your transformation begins. And as that awareness begins to settle, the question becomes unavoidable. If chasing brings so much frustration, so much imbalance, so much quiet suffering, then why do you keep doing it? Why does the mind return to the same pattern, even when experience has already shown the outcome? The answer is not simple, and it is not external. It does not lie in the behavior of others, nor in circumstance, but deeper, within the habits of your own thinking, within the beliefs you have carried for so long that they have become invisible to you. Because chasing is rarely about the other person. It is about what you believe their attention represents. To be noticed feels like validation. To be chosen feels like worth. To be responded to feels like importance. And when those things are absent, the mind interprets it as loss, not just of connection, but of value itself, as if your identity is somehow diminished by the silence or distance of another person. This is where the illusion takes hold. You begin to associate your self-worth with external reactions, tying your emotional state to something you do not control, and the more you invest in this illusion, the more dependent you become, not on the person, but on the feeling they give you when they acknowledge you. The Stoics saw through this clearly. They understood that anything outside your control cannot be the foundation of your peace, because what you do not control can be taken away at any moment, leaving you unstable, reactive, and constantly seeking to restore what was never truly yours. And yet the mind resists this truth. It tells you that if you try harder, if you give more, if you show more effort, things will change, that eventually you will be recognized, appreciated, valued in the way you hope, and so you continue, not because it works, but because the possibility of it working keeps you attached. Hope, when misplaced, becomes a trap. It keeps you investing energy where there is no return, keeps you waiting where there is no movement, keeps you chasing something that was never aligned with you to begin with. But there is something deeper beneath this pattern, something even more important to understand. The fear of being alone. Because chasing is not just about gaining others, it is about avoiding yourself. When you are constantly focused outward, constantly seeking interaction, constantly filling your time with connection, you create distance between yourself and your own thoughts, your own silence, your own reality. And for many, that silence is uncomfortable, because it reveals things they are not ready to face. Uncertainty, insecurity, lack of direction, unresolved thoughts. So instead of sitting with it, instead of understanding it, they escape it, through people. Through conversations that distract. Through attention that soothes temporarily. Through validation that covers the discomfort, but never removes it. And so the cycle continues. You chase to avoid feeling empty. You feel empty because you chase. A loop, repeated endlessly. But the Stoic does something different. The Stoic turns inward. Not to escape the world, but to understand it through the self, to observe the mind without immediately reacting to it, to question every impulse instead of obeying it, to sit in silence without rushing to fill it, and in doing so, something begins to change. At first, it is uncomfortable. The absence of distraction feels heavy. The lack of constant interaction feels unfamiliar. The silence feels loud. But within that silence, there is clarity. Because when you are no longer chasing, you are no longer running, and when you are no longer running, you can finally see what has been driving you all along. You begin to notice your triggers. You begin to understand your patterns. You begin to see the difference between desire and dependency. And this understanding is where your power starts to return. Because once you understand why you chase, you are no longer controlled by it. You can pause. You can choose differently. You can step back instead of leaning forward. And that small shift, from reaction to awareness, is the beginning of discipline. And now comes the point where awareness alone is no longer enough. Seeing the pattern of chasing, seeing its cost, understanding why it exists, these are important first steps. But Stoicism teaches that knowledge without action is empty. Insight must transform into deliberate practice, or it remains nothing more than another story in your head. The first truth to internalize is that detachment is not coldness, it is mastery. Modern psychology supports this in ways the Stoics could only articulate philosophically. Research in emotional intelligence shows that people who can observe their impulses without immediately reacting, what the Stoics called assent to impressions, experience less stress, stronger decision-making, and better interpersonal outcomes. In essence, your ability to detach from immediate emotional gratification is directly linked to your resilience and long-term satisfaction. This is why the Stoics emphasize the control of perception above all else. Marcus Aurelius wrote, You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. It is not the behavior of others, nor the external circumstances, that dictate your peace. It is your judgment of them. The moment you understand that, the need to chase diminishes, because you see that nothing outside of you has the authority to determine your value. Chasing is fundamentally a misalignment of desire and control. You are treating external approval as if it were within your control, but it is not. Scientific studies in behavioral psychology demonstrate that seeking validation from others activates the same reward pathways as addictive substances. The dopamine surge temporarily feels good, reinforcing the behavior, but it does not create lasting fulfillment. You become conditioned to seek external affirmation endlessly, never satisfying the deeper need for self-recognition. The Stoics recognized this thousands of years ago, framing it as the difference between what is preferred and what is good. Pleasure from others' approval is preferred, but not essential. Virtue and self-mastery are inherently good. So, how do you break this cycle? You begin by reclaiming internal sovereignty. Every time you feel the urge to chase, reply compulsively, overgive, overexplain, pause. Observe the impulse as though it were a separate entity in your mind. Ask, is this within my control? Will acting on this improve my character, my clarity, my peace? Or am I reacting out of habit, fear, or neediness? This simple cognitive pause rewires the brain over time. Modern neuroscience confirms that deliberate mindfulness strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for decision-making and impulse control, while reducing reactivity in the amygdala, the emotional fire alarm of the brain. In short, the more you practice observing yourself instead of reacting, the more you gain freedom from habitual chasing. Next comes intentional action. Stoicism is not passive. Detachment does not mean inaction, it means acting with reason, purpose, and alignment with your values, rather than out of compulsion. If someone values you, they will meet you at your level. If they do not, no amount of chasing will change that, and every wasted moment pursuing them is a moment you are not investing in yourself. Epictetus said it best. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. In this step, you also cultivate self-validation. Recognize your achievements, honor your boundaries, affirm your worth, not as an ego exercise, but as a foundation for deliberate living. Research in self-compassion shows that people who practice internal validation experience less anxiety, better emotional regulation, and higher life satisfaction. When your self-worth is anchored internally, the external world loses its power to destabilize you. Another deep layer is understanding impermanence. Stoics reminded themselves daily that everything outside their control is transient. Relationships, opinions, wealth, and status will all fade. Accepting this does not breed cynicism, it breeds clarity. Understanding impermanence allows you to release attachment to the responses of others and focus on what endures: your mind, your character, your actions. Modern studies on existential psychology mirror this. Those who internalize the finitude of life act more intentionally and invest in long-term goals instead of fleeting pleasures. And so the cycle of chasing begins to dissolve. Detachment, internal validation, and clarity of purpose create a new default. Rather than reaching outward for approval, you turn inward for strength. Your decisions become deliberate. Your time becomes precious. Your energy becomes aligned with growth, with learning, with the things that truly matter. This is not a quick process. It is slow, deliberate, and requires patience, reflection, and repeated practice. But each pause, each observation, each act of self-discipline strengthens your autonomy. You are no longer at the mercy of external whims, your happiness no longer relies on unstable elements, and your life gradually becomes unshakable, not because the world conforms to you, but because you have mastered yourself. And here lies the ultimate truth: freedom is internal, not external. Once you understand this, chasing becomes meaningless. It loses its appeal because it no longer offers power, no longer promises fulfillment, because fulfillment is already within. And this is the essence of Stoic mastery: living fully, deeply, and aligned with reason, without dependence on anything outside your control. And now comes the moment where philosophy meets practice, where insight transforms into deliberate living. Understanding why you chase and how detachment frees you is powerful, but the Stoics remind us that knowledge alone is not enough. Marcus Aurelius would wake each day reminding himself, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This is not morbidity, it is clarity. Every choice becomes precious. Every interaction, every thought, every action becomes an opportunity to practice mastery over the self. You begin by structuring your day not around the whims of others, but around your own intentions. You prioritize what is within your control, your thoughts, your discipline, your habits, your purpose. You wake early to cultivate the mind, to reflect on virtue, to strengthen the body, because Stoic philosophy is holistic. It understands that mental mastery cannot exist without physical and emotional discipline. Modern psychology supports this. Daily routines, journaling, and reflection significantly increase focus, self-control, and resilience, reinforcing the Stoic principle that mastery is cultivated through repeated, deliberate practice. Next comes boundaries. You start saying no, not out of spite, but from understanding the value of your time and energy. You no longer respond immediately to every message, no longer give when it drains you, no longer overextend yourself to maintain fleeting approval. Every time you enforce a boundary, you reinforce the lesson: your peace is non-negotiable, your self-respect is paramount, and your attention is a resource, not to be squandered. Behavioral science calls this self-regulation, the ability to control impulses and delay gratification, which studies repeatedly show as a key predictor of life satisfaction, success, and emotional resilience. At the same time, you practice intentional connection. Detachment does not mean isolation. You do not reject the world, you engage with it purposefully. You invest in relationships that are reciprocal, supportive, and aligned with your values. You no longer chase, you no longer beg for attention, but you welcome genuine connection. And the paradox emerges: the more you stop chasing, the more meaningful connections appear, because your energy is no longer scattered on inauthentic pursuits. It is focused, deliberate, and grounded in self-respect. You also begin to observe yourself relentlessly. Every urge to chase, every impulse for validation, every pang of insecurity becomes a signal, a moment to pause and assess. You ask, is this aligned with my principles? Will this action strengthen or weaken me? Am I acting from need, fear, or reason? This is not self-criticism. It is disciplined self-observation. Neuroscience calls this metacognition, the ability to reflect on your own thinking, which is directly tied to improved decision-making, emotional regulation, and long-term goal achievement. The Stoics practice this through journaling, reflection, and constant mental rehearsal, tools that remain effective thousands of years later. And then comes acceptance. Acceptance of what you cannot control, acceptance of the impermanence of people, circumstances, and outcomes. The Stoics were clear: the world is indifferent. Happiness is found not in changing it, but in mastering yourself. Epictetus said, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." In practice, this means you release the need to manipulate or chase outcomes that are beyond your control. You stop investing emotional energy in people who are not aligned with you, not out of anger or pride, but because you understand that life is too short to spend chasing illusions. Finally, you cultivate resilience through reflection. Each day, you review your actions, your choices, your impulses. You celebrate small victories, pausing when you would have chased, enforcing a boundary, choosing solitude over distraction, practicing patience. You learn from failures, not as shame, but as feedback. The Stoics were masters of this daily reflection. Modern research in habit formation shows that reflection strengthens neural pathways associated with self-control, making disciplined behavior increasingly automatic over time. Through this process, the old compulsion to chase fades. The mind grows calm. Decisions become deliberate. Presence replaces desperation. And the freedom you gain is profound: the freedom to act without fear, to engage without neediness, to live fully in alignment with your values, and to build a life that is unshakable because it is rooted in you, not the whims of others. And now, as your mind settles into clarity, and your impulses begin to obey reason rather than habit, you start to notice the world differently. Relationships, once a source of anxiety and dependence, now appear as mirrors, reflections of your own choices, your own values, your own discipline. The Stoics understood this. Other people are either good nor bad in themselves. They are what they are, and your task is not to change them but to manage your own mind. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, I will meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, unsocial. They cannot harm me because they are only reflections of themselves. This perspective fundamentally changes how you interact with the world. You no longer chase approval because you understand that attempting to change others' perception of you is both futile and draining. Epictetus, a Stoic who endured slavery and oppression yet found freedom through philosophy, taught that freedom comes not from removing external obstacles but from mastering your own mind. The world does not owe you understanding, recognition, or attention. Seeking it is a form of enslavement. Recognizing this is the first step to reclaiming your autonomy. At the same time, you begin to engage with others intentionally. Detachment does not mean disengagement. It means acting with purpose, aligning interactions with your values rather than impulses. Social influence, once a tool you sought from others, now becomes a product of your own presence. People are drawn to authenticity, to calm confidence, to self-possession. Neuroscience supports this. Studies on emotional contagion show that individuals with controlled emotional states and deliberate presence can influence group mood and behavior without effort or coercion. The Stoics practice this through their calm demeanor and disciplined conduct, understanding that influence is earned through virtue, not pursuit. As your self-mastery grows, so too does your understanding of life's impermanence. Relationships, careers, possessions, all are transient. Stoicism teaches that attachment to impermanent things is a source of suffering. Viktor Frankl echoed this principle in the 20th century. Suffering diminishes when we anchor our meaning in purpose rather than external circumstance. You begin to see that chasing people or validation is chasing the ephemeral. You focus instead on purpose, the building of character, the cultivation of virtue, the alignment of action with reason. You begin structuring your life around what truly matters. Daily habits are no longer arbitrary, they are deliberate. Morning reflection, journaling, focused work, discipline in body and mind, and consistent self-evaluation become cornerstones. Each day is treated as a microcosm of life itself, each decision weighed. Does this strengthen my character? Does this align with my values? Will this bring me closer to self-mastery? This is the practice the Stoics called prohairesis, the ability to make deliberate, reasoned choices in alignment with virtue. Modern psychology shows that daily deliberate practice and reflection create neural pathways that enhance self-control, long-term goal achievement, and emotional regulation. And as you engage with life this way, you notice something profound. People no longer dictate your emotional state. Criticism does not wound. Praise does not inflate. Success does not define you. Failure does not break you. You exist in equilibrium, observing events as they unfold, reacting with reason, not compulsion. This is not detachment from life, it is mastery over your engagement with it. Yet, mastery does not mean isolation. You cultivate relationships that resonate with your values, that contribute to growth rather than depletion. Here, Stoicism aligns with modern social psychology. Humans are inherently social, and the quality of your connections has a profound effect on mental health and purpose fulfillment. But now you choose deliberately. You invest only where alignment exists, and you let go where it does not out of anger, but out of clarity and self-respect. You also embrace the inevitability of change. Life will test you, friends will leave, loved ones will disappoint, opportunities will vanish. But because your foundation is internal, built upon discipline, virtue, and self-knowledge, the world cannot destabilize you. You navigate relationships, influence, and life purpose with calm intentionality, aware that the only thing truly yours is your mind, your choices, and the way you meet every circumstance with reason. Over time, the compulsion to chase diminishes entirely. It is replaced by presence, purpose, and deliberate action. You no longer seek to fill yourself with others' validation because you are already whole. You no longer fear abandonment because your autonomy is complete. You no longer attempt to control outcomes because you understand what is within your power and what is not. And in that understanding, a remarkable transformation occurs. Your life becomes magnetized, not by your effort to impress or pursue, but by the authenticity, strength, and unshakable peace that radiates from you. People, opportunities, and influence align naturally because your energy is no longer scattered. Your actions are deliberate. Your choices reflect wisdom rather than compulsion. Your purpose becomes clear, your focus unwavering, and your presence unmistakable. At the deepest level, this is the essence of Stoicism applied to modern life: self-mastery, deliberate living, and purposeful engagement with the world. It is a life unchained from dependence, free from compulsion, and anchored in internal strength. By stopping the chase, you do not lose the world, you gain the entirety of yourself. And once you internalize this fully, life's challenges, relationship difficulties, social pressures, rejection, failure, become opportunities for practice rather than sources of suffering. Every interaction is a chance to exercise reason. Every disappointment is a moment to strengthen resolve. Every fleeting pleasure is recognized for what it is, and not mistaken for value. This is not a philosophy of inaction. It is a philosophy of focused, deliberate action, applied with clarity, reason, and self-possession. You have stopped chasing. You have begun choosing. And in choosing yourself, you discover a life that is not only freer and calmer, but infinitely more powerful. And now you reach the final layer, the synthesis of everything you have learned and practiced. Mastery is not a single moment, it is a continuous process. It is the quiet power of waking each day, observing yourself, and choosing deliberately. It is the discipline to pause before reacting, the courage to let go of what does not serve you, and the wisdom to align every action with your principles. The Stoics knew that life is fleeting, unpredictable, and often unfair. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do every act of your life as though it were the last." This is not dramatic rhetoric, it is clarity in action, a reminder that every choice matters and that freedom comes from living deliberately, not reactively. Resilience emerges naturally from this process. You are no longer defined by external circumstances, by people's approval, or by fleeting successes or failures. Modern psychology supports this. Individuals who anchor their self-worth internally experience lower anxiety, greater life satisfaction, and stronger emotional stability. The Stoics understood this intuitively thousands of years ago. They anchored their minds, not the world, and in doing so, they became unshakable. When challenges arise, as they inevitably do, you no longer respond with panic or desperation. You respond with reason. A disagreement, a betrayal, or an unexpected loss no longer derails your peace because you have built a foundation within yourself that no external force can destroy. You understand what is within your control and what is not. You take responsibility for your choices and release attachment to outcomes beyond your reach. This is true freedom, true mastery. And in living this way, your presence becomes magnetic. People sense the difference. It is quiet, subtle, and profound. You do not need to chase attention, it comes naturally. You do not need to manipulate outcomes. They align with your integrity and focus. You have stopped reacting to the world and started acting in accordance with your highest principles. This is the power of choosing yourself. Now, as you reflect on this journey, remember this: every moment you spend chasing others is a moment you are not investing in your own growth. Every moment you seek validation outside yourself is a moment you are giving away your power. The path of the Stoic is not easy, but it is worth it. It is a path of clarity, discipline, and purpose. It is a path that leads to freedom, resilience, and mastery over your own mind. And here is the call to attention. Stop chasing people. Choose yourself. Stop relying on external validation. Stop bending yourself to fit the expectations of others. Stop surrendering your peace to fleeting desires. Instead, invest in yourself. Strengthen your mind, discipline your habits, refine your character, and focus on what truly matters. The world will continue to move, opinions will continue to shift, and people will continue to come and go, but your internal mastery will remain. If this message resonates with you, if you feel the stirrings of clarity, discipline, and power within yourself, take action now. Reflect, journal, pause, and align your choices with your principles. Commit to the daily practice of choosing yourself, not once, but consistently, and watch how your life transforms. And finally, for those who want more guidance on this journey, subscribe to this channel. Hit the notification bell. Watch the next video on your screen. Each lesson, each reflection, each practice will bring you closer to the unshakable life that Stoicism promises. Remember, freedom is within. Peace is within. Power is within. Stop chasing the world. Start mastering yourself. Choose yourself.